Get your hands off my son! Catherine Sterling shoved the nurse backward. Her Cartier watch caught the fluorescent light as she grabbed the IV pole, pulling it away from the bed, where her 9-year-old boy lay dying. You're killing him. Where's the real doctor? Where's someone who knows what they're doing? She didn't know that the only man who could save Julian was mopping floors 2 stories below. The same black surgeon she had fired. The same man she had called a liability to modern medicine. The same man whose wife died because Catherine Sterling took away his insurance. In 3 hours, she would be on her knees begging him for help. Comment your city. I want to see how far this story reaches. Your son has 72 hours, maybe less. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo didn't sugarcoat it. 23 years of oncology had taught her that desperate parents needed truth, not comfort. Catherine Sterling grabbed the doctor's coat. Then do something. I'm paying this hospital $14 million a year. Find a donor. Find 10 donors. I don't care what it costs. Mrs. Sterling money can't manufacture compatible bone marrow. Your son has an HLA profile we've never seen before. 1 in 12 million. We've searched every registry on the planet. Search again. We have. 17 times. Catherine's grip loosened. Her hand fell to her side. For 47 years, she had bent the world to her will. Hostile takeovers. Billion-dollar acquisitions. Senate hearings where she'd made grown men stammer. None of it had prepared her for this moment. There has to be someone, she whispered. There isn't. Not in any database we can access. Catherine looked through the glass partition at her son. Julian was asleep, his bald head pale against the pillow, his body thin as kindling. He'd been fighting leukemia for 11 months. He'd never complained, not once. Last week he'd asked her, "Mom, when I get better, can we get a dog, a big one, like a German Shepherd?" She'd said yes. She'd said yes to everything because she couldn't say the truth. What about unregistered donors? Catherine's voice hardened. People who've never been tested. Employees, patients, anyone in this building. That's a 1 in 400,000 chance. I don't care about chances. Test everyone. Every single person who walks through those doors. I'll pay for it. I'll pay double. Triple. Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. I'll authorize hospital-wide screening. But Mrs. Sterling, you need to prepare yourself. For what? For the possibility that we won't find anyone. Catherine's jaw tightened. That's not a possibility I accept. She turned and walked toward Julian's room. Her heels echoed in the empty corridor like gunshots. 2 floors below, Derek Coleman was finishing his shift. 16 hours. That's how long he'd been on his feet. 8 hours as a security guard at Sterling Medical Center. 8 more at the Amazon warehouse across town loading boxes until his back screamed for mercy. $34 an hour combined. Just enough to keep the lights on. Just enough to pay for Maya's medical checkups. Never enough to feel safe. He checked his watch. 5:47 a.m. Maya would be waking up soon at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. The elderly neighbor watched her during Derek's night shifts free of charge because she'd known Angela, because she understood what it meant to be alone. Derek grabbed his jacket from the locker. His hand stopped on the fabric. Angela had bought him this jacket. 3 Christmases ago, when he was still Dr. Derek Coleman, when they still had a house in Worthington, when the future was something to look forward to instead of survive. You work too hard, she'd said, wrapping it around his shoulders. Promise me you'll rest sometimes. He'd promised. He'd broken that promise 1,000 times since. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson Myers asking for pancakes. Should I make some? Derek typed back. Please. I'll be there in 30. Thank her for me. He closed his locker and headed for the exit. That's when the intercom crackled. Code Marrow, Pediatric Oncology. All compatible personnel report to Station 4. Repeat, Code Marrow. Derek kept walking. Donor match urgently needed for patient Julian Sterling. Julian Sterling. All registered donors report immediately. Derek stopped. His hand gripped the door handle. His knuckles turned white. Sterling. The name hit him like a fist to the chest. 2 years of carefully constructed numbness cracked wide open. Julian Sterling, Catherine Sterling's son. He pushed through the door and walked into the morning air. Behind him, the intercom kept repeating the name. He didn't look back. Maya was covered in syrup when Derek arrived. "Daddy!" She launched herself off the kitchen chair and into his arms. Mrs. Patterson made Mickey Mouse pancakes look. Derek lifted her up, breathing in the smell of maple and childhood. She was 7 years old, 38 pounds, the only thing in this world that made sense anymore. "Did you save the ears for me?" "No, I ate them first. They're the best part." Mrs. Patterson smiled from the stove. 73 years old, white hair pulled back in a bun, the kind of grandmother everyone deserved, but few were lucky enough to find. "She's been up since 5, the old woman said. "Couldn't wait for you to get home." "I'm sorry, the shift ran long." "Don't apologize. That girl loves her daddy more than pancakes, and that's saying something." Mrs. Patterson wiped her hands on her apron. "You look tired, Derek. More tired than usual." "I'm fine." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Mrs. Patterson gave him the look, the one that said she'd raised 4 children and buried a husband and could spot a lie from across the room. But she didn't push. She never pushed. That's why Derek trusted her. "There's coffee on the counter, fresh." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." "Thank me by getting some sleep. You're no good to that girl if you collapse." Derek set Maya down and reached for the coffee. His hands were shaking. Mrs. Patterson noticed, but said nothing. They walked home through the gray morning light. Their apartment was 6 blocks away, a 2-bedroom unit in a building that had seen better decades. The elevator hadn't worked since March. The hallway smelled like cigarettes and someone else's cooking. But the rent was $847 a month, and the locks worked, and Maya had her own room. That was enough. It had to be enough. "Daddy?" "Yes, baby." Tommy at school said his dad makes $100 every day. Is that a lot? Derek's throat tightened. That's pretty good, yeah. Do you make $100? Sometimes, when I work extra. Maya was quiet for a moment. Her small hand held his as they climbed the stairs. Mommy said you used to be a doctor. A really important one. I was. Why did you stop? They reached the 3rd floor. Derek unlocked their door, letting Maya run inside ahead of him. He stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at their small living room. The second-hand couch, the TV with the cracked corner, the photograph of Angela on the shelf. Sometimes things happen, he said finally. Things we don't plan for, and we have to change. But you liked being a doctor. You helped people. I still help people, Maya, just in a different way. Like being a security guard. Like being your daddy. Maya considered this. Then she nodded satisfied with the answer and ran to her room to change out of her syrup-stained pajamas. Derek closed the door and leaned against it. Julian Sterling was dying. Right now, in the same hospital where Derek mopped floors, a 9-year-old boy was running out of time. And Derek knew, with the certainty of 14 years of medical training, that he was probably the only match. He'd been tested during his residency at Johns Hopkins. The geneticist, Dr. Sarah Chen, had been fascinated by his results. Your HLA markers are extraordinary, she'd said. We typically see this combination in Northern European populations. Scandinavian mostly, but yours are even more rare. You've got a mutation we've only documented in a handful of families worldwide. What does that mean? It means you're one of the most valuable bone marrow donors on the planet. If someone needs your specific markers, you might be the only person who can save them. Derek had registered with the national database that same week. Over the next decade, he'd donated twice. Once to a teenager in Ohio with aplastic anemia. Once to an infant in Georgia with a rare immune disorder. Both survived. Both sent him letters every year. But when Catherine Sterling terminated his employment, his registration was suspended along with his medical license. He was removed from the active database. On paper, Derek Coleman no longer existed as a potential donor. On paper. But his blood still carried the same markers. His marrow still held the same life-saving potential. The only thing that had changed was his name on a list. And now Julian Sterling was dying. Derek walked to the window and looked out at the city waking up below. Columbus, Ohio. He'd lived here for 12 years, had built a career here, had fallen in love and gotten married and become a father here, had watched his wife die here. Angela would have known what to do. She always did. Forgiveness isn't about them, she'd told him once near the end. It's about you. It's about choosing not to carry poison in your heart. She destroyed our lives, Angela. She took everything from us. No. She took things, material things, status things. She didn't take Maya. She didn't take our love. She didn't take who you are. Angela had squeezed his hand, her grip weak but her eyes fierce. Don't let her take that too, Derek. Don't let bitterness win. He'd promised to try. 18 months later, he still wasn't sure if he was succeeding. The phone call came at 2:15 p.m. Derek was half asleep on the couch, Maya watching cartoons beside him, when his cell phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Probably a scam call, or a debt collector, or someone else who wanted money he didn't have. But something made him pick up. Mr. Coleman, this is Dr. Patricia Okonkwo from Sterling Medical Center. Derek sat up. Patricia. He hadn't spoken to her since the termination hearing. She'd been one of 3 colleagues who'd testified in his defense. It hadn't mattered. Patricia. I know this is unexpected, and I know you have every reason to hang up on me, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What is it? Are you still in the bone marrow registry? Derek's blood went cold. I was removed, when they suspended my license. I know. But your genetic profile is still in the research archives. I ran a comparison this morning. She paused. Derek, you're a match. A perfect match. 10 out of 10 HLA markers. The cartoon sounds from the TV seemed to come from very far away. Maya laughed at something on the screen. Derek couldn't hear it. For Julian Sterling, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, for Julian Sterling. Does she know? Catherine. No. No one knows except me and the lab technician who ran the test. I haven't reported it yet. Why not? Because I wanted to talk to you first. Because I know what she did to you. And because... Patricia's voice wavered. Because that boy is 9 years old, Derek. He's scared and sick, and he has maybe 3 days left. He's not his mother. Derek closed his eyes. I can't make you do this, Patricia continued. No one can force you. If you say no, I'll delete the test results and no one will ever know. You can walk away clean. But he'll die. Yes, he'll die. Maya tugged at Derek's sleeve. Daddy? Who's on the phone? Just a friend, baby. Give me a minute. He walked to the bedroom and closed the door. Through the thin walls, he could hear Maya humming along with the cartoon theme song. How long would the procedure take? He asked. The donation itself about 4 hours. But you'd need to prep for a week. Injections to boost your marrow production. Then the extraction. And the extraction? That's the painful one. Yes. They insert needles into your hip bones, multiple times. It's not easy. Derek thought about the last time he'd been in an operating room. He'd been the one holding the scalpel. He'd been the one making decisions. He'd been Dr. Derek Coleman, surgeon healer somebody. Now he was nobody. But his blood was still the same. His marrow was still the same. The only thing that had changed was what the world called him. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I don't want her money. I don't want her gratitude. I don't want anything from her. I understand. And I don't want her to know. Not until it's done. I don't want to see her face. I don't want to hear her voice. Derek, promise me, Patricia. Promise me she won't know until the needle is already in my spine." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Patricia spoke, her voice thick with something that might have been tears. "I promise." Derek looked at the bedroom door. Beyond it, his daughter was laughing at a cartoon, innocent and happy, and completely unaware that her father was about to make the hardest decision of his life. "I'll do it," he said. "For him. Not for her, for the boy." The PrEP injections started 2 days later. Derek told Maya he had a new job. Temporary work at the hospital. Better hours, better pay. She didn't question it. She never questioned him. For 5 days he reported to a small clinic on the hospital's east wing. A nurse named Roberto administered the shots filgrastim, a drug that stimulated bone marrow production. The side effects hit hard. Bone pain, fatigue, headaches that made his vision blur. But he didn't complain. He'd seen Angela suffer through chemotherapy that made this look like a paper cut. He'd held her hand while she vomited blood and told her everything would be okay. He could handle a few needles. On the 6th day, Patricia called him into her office. "There's a problem," she said. Derek's stomach dropped. "The match isn't working." "No, the match is fine. Better than fine. Julian's responding well to the PrEP treatment. He's stable enough for the transplant." Patricia hesitated. "The problem is Catherine." "What about her?" "She found out about the donor match. She demanded to know who it was. Hospital administration. They couldn't keep it from her. She's the primary funder. She has access to everything." Derek felt the room tilt. "She knows it's me." "Not yet. I convinced them to delay the disclosure until after the procedure." "But Derek?" Patricia met his eyes. "She's going to be there. Tomorrow. In the donation center. She's refusing to leave her son's side, and the transplant will happen in the same wing. You'll see her." Derek thought about the last time he'd seen Catherine Sterling. The boardroom. The fluorescent lights. The way she'd looked at him like he was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Dr. Coleman violated established medical protocol. He performed an unauthorized experimental procedure without consent. He is a liability to this institution and to modern medicine as a whole. 16 years of education. 14 years of practice, destroyed in 90 seconds by a woman who had never held a dying child in her arms. "Fine," Derek said. "Let her be there. It doesn't change anything." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it for a 9-year-old kid who never did anything wrong except get sick." Patricia nodded slowly. "You're a better man than most, Derek Coleman." "No. I'm just a man who made a promise to his dying wife." The morning of the extraction, Derek woke at 4 a.m. Maya was still asleep in her room, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. Mrs. Patterson had agreed to watch her for the day. Derek had told her he was working a double shift. Another lie. Another necessary deception. He stood in Maya's doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. She looked so much like Angela. The curve of her cheek. The way her lips parted slightly when she slept, the fierce determination that showed even in her dreams. "I'm doing the right thing," he whispered. "I think, I hope." Maya stirred, but didn't wake. Derek kissed her forehead and walked out into the darkness. The donation center was cold and bright. Derek changed into a hospital gown, feeling the vulnerability of exposed skin after years of wearing scrubs on the other side. A nurse took his vitals. Blood pressure elevated but acceptable. Heart rate slightly fast. All normal for someone about to undergo a major procedure. "Dr. Okonkwo will be supervising," the nurse said. "She requested it personally." "Good. That's good. Is there anyone you'd like us to call family, a friend?" Derek thought of Maya still sleeping unaware. He thought of Mrs. Patterson making breakfast unsuspecting. He thought of Angela gone, but never gone watching from wherever the dead watch from. "No," he said. "There's no one." They led him to the extraction room at 6:30 a.m. The table was narrow-padded, designed for the procedure he was about to endure. Derek lay face down, his arms at his sides. His face turned toward the window. Outside, the sun was rising over Columbus. Orange and pink and gold, the colors Angela used to love. Patricia appeared beside him, her gloved hand resting on his shoulder. "You can still change your mind," she said quietly. "Right up until the needle goes in. No one would blame you." "I'm not changing my mind." "Okay." She squeezed his shoulder. "I'll be here the whole time. If the pain gets too intense." "I've felt worse." Patricia didn't argue. She knew what he meant. The anesthesiologist administered a local numbing agent. Derek felt the cold spread across his lower back, his hips, the bones that were about to be punctured. "We're going to begin," Patricia said. "First insertion in 30 seconds. Derek closed his eyes. He thought about Julian Sterling, 9 years old, afraid of the dark. He thought about Maya, 7 years old, who still believed her daddy could fix anything. He thought about Angela, who had made him promise not to let bitterness win. The needle pierced his hip bone. Derek didn't scream. He bit down on the rubber guard they'd given him and breathed through the pain, the deep grinding ache of metal scraping against marrow. The second needle came 30 seconds later. Then the third. For 2 hours they extracted life from his bones. And somewhere in the hospital, Julian Sterling was prepped for the transplant that would save his life. Catherine found out at 8:47 a.m. She was standing outside Julian's room watching through the glass as nurses prepared him for the procedure when a hospital administrator approached her. "Mrs. Sterling, we've identified the donor." "Who is it? I want to meet them. I want to thank them personally." The administrator hesitated. "Ma'am, the donor has requested anonymity." "I don't care what they requested. This person is saving my son's life. I have a right to know." "Mrs. Sterling, tell me the name." The administrator looked down at her tablet. Her face was pale. "The donor's name is Derek Coleman." Catherine didn't move. The name hung in the air like a blade. "Coleman," she repeated. "Derek Coleman. He's currently in the extraction procedure, has been for about 2 hours. The transplant will begin as soon as—" "Where?" "Excuse me. Where is he?" "The donation center." "What room?" "Mrs. Sterling, I really don't think—" But Catherine was already walking. Her heels clicked against the linoleum faster and faster until she was nearly running. She passed nurses who called her name, doctors who tried to stop her, security guards who didn't dare touch her. She reached the donation center at 9:03 a.m. Through the glass window she saw him. Derek Coleman, the surgeon she had destroyed, lying face down on a table, needles in his spine, giving his bone marrow to save her son. His face was turned toward the window. His eyes were closed. His jaw was clenched against pain he refused to show. Beside him in a plastic chair sat a little girl. 7 years old, brown skin, braided hair, holding her father's hand while he bled for a stranger. Catherine's legs stopped working. She stood frozen at the window, watching the man she had ruined sacrifice himself for the child she loved. Her throat closed. Her eyes burned. For the first time in 47 years, Catherine Sterling had no words. Derek opened his eyes. He saw her standing there. He saw the shock on her face, the confusion, the dawning horror of recognition. Their eyes met through the glass. And Derek Coleman, the disgraced surgeon, the night security guard, the single father who had every right to hate her, spoke 5 words that shattered everything she thought she knew about justice. "Your son is going to live." Catherine's hand pressed against the glass. Her fingers left smudges on the sterile surface, 5 marks that trembled with each breath she took. Derek held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he closed his eyes and turned his face away. The little girl beside him looked up. She saw Catherine standing at the window. She saw the tears streaming down the strange woman's face. And with the simple clarity of a child, she understood something important was happening. "Daddy," Maya whispered, "that lady is crying." "I know, baby. Should I give her a tissue?" Derek almost laughed. Even now, even here with needles in his spine and his enemy at the door, Maya was thinking about kindness. Angela would have been proud. "Stay here with me," he said. "Hold my hand. That's what I need right now." Maya squeezed tighter. "Does it hurt a lot?" "Some, but I've had worse." "Like when Mommy was sick?" "Yeah, baby, like when Mommy was sick." Outside the window, Catherine hadn't moved. Patricia noticed her standing there and walked out of the extraction room, her surgical gloves still spotted with Derek's blood. "Mrs. Sterling, you shouldn't be here." "That's Derek Coleman." "Yes." "The surgeon I fired. The man I—" Catherine's voice broke. Why would he do this?" Patricia studied the woman before her. She had known Catherine Sterling for 15 years, had watched her build an empire crush competitors dominate boardrooms with a glance. She had never seen her look like this. Small, lost, human. "You should ask him that yourself," Patricia said. "After the procedure, when he's recovered." "I can't wait. I need to talk to him now." "He's in the middle of a bone marrow extraction. He's in pain. He's exhausted. And frankly, Mrs. Sterling, you're the last person he wants to see right now." Catherine flinched like she'd been slapped. "He agreed to do this knowing I would find out," she said. "Knowing I would see him. Why?" "Because your son is 9 years old. Because he's innocent. Because Derek Coleman is a better person than you ever gave him credit for." The words hit Catherine like bullets. She stepped back from the window, her hand falling to her side. "I destroyed him," she whispered. "I took everything from him." "Yes, you did." "And he's saving my son anyway." "Yes, he is." Catherine looked through the glass again. Derek's body was rigid on the table, his muscles clenched against the pain he refused to show. The little girl beside him was stroking his arm, humming a song Catherine didn't recognize. "Who is that child?" "His daughter, Maya. She's 7. She's here. She's watching this." She insisted. Apparently she told her father that if he was going to be brave, she needed to be brave too. Patricia paused. "She's a remarkable child. Her mother was the same way." "Her mother?" "Angela Coleman. She died 18 months ago. Lupus. The disease flared after they lost their insurance." Catherine's face went pale. "After they lost—" "After you terminated Derek's employment, yes. They couldn't afford her medication. The disease progressed. She died in this hospital, Mrs. Sterling. In a room 2 floors above where you're standing right now." The corridor seemed to spin. Catherine put her hand on the wall to steady herself. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know any of that." "Would it have mattered if you did?" Catherine didn't answer. She couldn't answer. Because she knew the truth, and the truth was ugly. 2 years ago, Derek Coleman had been nothing to her, a name on a liability report, a problem to be solved. She had erased him from Sterling Medical Center the same way she erased line items from a budget efficiently, dispassionately, without a second thought. She hadn't wondered what happened to him afterward. She hadn't cared. And now his blood was about to flow into her son's veins. "I need to sit down," Catherine said. Patricia pointed to a row of chairs against the wall. "Wait there. The extraction will be finished in about an hour. After that, we'll begin the transplant. If you want to thank him, you can try. But I'm warning you, don't expect forgiveness. You haven't earned it." Catherine walked to the chairs and lowered herself into one. Her legs felt like water. Her hands couldn't stop shaking. Through the window, she watched Derek Coleman bleed for her son. And for the first time in her life, Catherine Sterling felt something she couldn't buy her way out of. Shame. The extraction took another 93 minutes. Derek counted every one of them. Not the minutes themselves, but the waves of pain that came with each needle adjustment. repositioning each time the medical team drew more marrow from his bones. He'd done this twice before for strangers whose names he'd never known. Those donations had hurt. But this one was different. This one carried weight. This one meant something beyond medicine. Almost done. Patricia set her hand on his shoulder. You're doing great. How much more? 2 more draws. Maybe 15 minutes. Derek nodded. His jaw ached from clenching. His back felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Maya was still beside him, her small hand wrapped around his fingers. She hadn't let go once in 3 hours. Daddy, you're sweating. I know, baby. Is it like when you run really fast and your body gets hot? Something like that. When you're done, can we get ice cream? Derek managed a weak smile. Yeah, Maya. When I'm done, we can get ice cream. The good kind. With the chocolate pieces. The good kind. With all the chocolate pieces you want. Maya smiled satisfied. She went back to humming her song, the one Angela used to sing at bedtime. Derek closed his eyes and let the melody carry him somewhere else. Somewhere before all of this. Somewhere where Angela was still alive, and his daughter was still innocent, and the world made sense. The final needle withdrew at 10:41 a.m. Patricia covered the extraction sites with bandages, checked his vitals, and helped him turn onto his back. Derek stared at the ceiling, breathing hard, his body trembling from exhaustion. You did it, Patricia said. The marrow looks perfect. Julian's going to have a real chance now. Good, that's good. Derek, there's something you should know. Catherine is outside. She's been waiting the whole time. She wants to talk to you. Derek's jaw tightened. I don't want to see her. I told her that, but she's not leaving. You know how she is. Yeah, I know exactly how she is. Patricia helped him sit up slowly. The room tilted, and Derek grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. You've lost a lot of marrow, Patricia said. You're going to be weak for the next few days. Probably dizzy. Definitely tired. I want you to rest. Eat iron-rich foods. Drink plenty of fluids. I know the protocol, Patricia. I used to give it to my own patients. I know you do, but right now you're not the doctor. You're the patient. Let someone else take care of you for once. Maya jumped off her chair and wrapped her arms around Derek's waist. I can take care of you, Daddy. Mrs. Patterson taught me how to make soup. Derek kissed the top of her head. That sounds perfect, baby. A nurse brought a wheelchair. Derek wanted to refuse it, wanted to walk out of this room on his own 2 feet, but his body had other plans. His legs buckled the moment he tried to stand. Patricia caught him. Wheelchair it is. This is embarrassing. This is medicine. Big difference. They helped him into the chair. Maya immediately climbed onto his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. I'm your seatbelt, she announced. So you don't fall out. Derek held her close, breathing in the smell of her hair, the last piece of Angela he had left. They wheeled him toward the door. Catherine Sterling was waiting on the other side. She stood up the moment the door opened. Her face was blotchy from crying. Her mascara streaked her perfect composure, shattered beyond repair. Mr. Coleman. Derek looked at her. The woman who had stood in that boardroom 2 years ago, who had called him a liability, who had stripped away everything he'd worked his entire life to build. She looked smaller now, older, like someone had reached inside her and removed something essential. Mrs. Sterling. She stopped, started again. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. But I have to. What you did, what you're doing for my son, I don't understand. After everything I did to you, how can you... I'm not doing it for you. The words cut through the corridor like a blade. Catherine stepped back. I'm doing it for Julian, Derek continued. Because he's 9 years old. Because he's sick. Because he doesn't deserve to die for his mother's sins. Catherine's face crumpled. I know he doesn't. But you didn't have to. You're right, I didn't have to. I chose to. There's a difference. Maya looked up at her father, then at the crying woman in front of them. "Daddy, why is she so sad?" Derek stroked his daughter's hair. "Because she made some bad choices, baby. And now she's realizing what those choices cost." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. A sob escaped between her fingers. "Mr. Coleman, I am so sorry. For what I did. For what happened to your wife. For all of it. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know. That's different too." "I was wrong. I was so wrong. You saved that little girl's life. Emily Whitfield. I looked up her records. The procedure you performed, they use it as standard protocol now. 3 hospitals adopted it based on your case notes. You were right. You were right, and I destroyed you anyway." Derek felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something. "I know I was right," he said quietly. "I've always known. I didn't need you to tell me. Then why did you do this? Why help Julian when you had every reason to let him die?" The question hung in the air. Maya looked up at her father, waiting for the answer. Patricia stood silently by the door. Even the nurses had stopped moving, caught in the gravity of the moment. Derek thought about Angela, about the promise he'd made, about the man she'd believed him to be. "Because my wife asked me to," he said finally. "Before she died, she made me promise not to let bitterness win. She said you only took things from us, material things, status things. She said you didn't take who I am." He paused. "She was right. You didn't. I'm still a healer. I'm still a father. I'm still the man who can't watch a child die when I have the power to save him." Catherine was sobbing openly now, her body shaking with each breath. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "I don't deserve your mercy." "No, you don't. But Julian does. And that's all that matters." Derek looked at Patricia. "Can we go now? I need to rest." Patricia nodded. She pushed the wheelchair forward toward the elevator, away from the woman who was falling apart in the corridor behind them. Catherine called out one last time. "Mr. Coleman!" Derek didn't turn around. "I'll make it right. I swear to you, I'll find a way to make it right." The elevator doors closed. Derek exhaled slowly, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. Maya patted his chest. "You were really brave, Daddy." "You think so?" "Mommy would be proud. I'm proud too." Derek kissed her forehead, hiding the tears that had finally started to fall. "That's all I needed to hear, baby. That's all I needed to hear." The transplant began at 2:15 p.m. Derek wasn't there for it. He was in a recovery room on the 3rd floor, sleeping off the exhaustion of 3 hours of marrow extraction. Maya had curled up beside him on the narrow bed, her small body pressed against his, her breathing slow and steady. Mrs. Patterson had offered to come pick her up, but Derek had refused. He needed Maya close. Needed to feel her warmth, hear her breath, remember why he had made the choices he'd made. 2 floors above Julian Sterling received the first drops of Derek's marrow. The 9-year-old was unconscious, his body prepared for the infusion that would save his life. Catherine sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching the dark liquid flow through the IV tube into her son's bloodstream. She thought about the man who had given it, the surgeon she had fired, the husband she had widowed, the father who had forgiven what could not be forgiven. "Why?" she whispered to the empty room. "Why would anyone do that?" She didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure she deserved one. The infusion lasted 4 hours. Dr. Okonkwo monitored every minute of it, checking Julian's vitals, watching for signs of rejection, praying that the marrow would take. It was a delicate process, transplanting life from one body to another. So many things could go wrong. So many variables beyond anyone's control. But at 6:23 p.m., the first positive signs appeared. Julian's white blood cell count, which had been dangerously low for weeks, showed the faintest uptick. His temperature, which had been spiking erratically, began to stabilize. His body was accepting the gift Derek Coleman had given. "It's working," Patricia told Catherine. "His immune system is responding. This is exactly what we hoped to see." Catherine broke down again. She had been breaking down all day, crying, until she had no tears left, then finding more. Her son was going to live. Her son was going to live because a man she had wronged had chosen mercy over revenge. "When can I see Mr. Coleman?" she asked. "I need to thank him properly." "He's resting. The extraction took a lot out of him. Give him time." "I'll give him whatever he needs. Whatever he wants. Anything." Patricia studied her carefully. "Mrs. Sterling, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Humbled." Catherine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her mascara was completely gone, now her face bare, her armor stripped away. "I've spent my whole life believing that power was the only thing that mattered," she said. "That if I was strong enough, rich enough, ruthless enough, nothing could hurt me. Nothing could touch me." She looked at Julian, pale but alive, fighting his way back from the edge. "I was wrong. Power didn't save my son. Money didn't save my son. A man with nothing saved my son. A man I treated like dirt." Patricia sat down beside her. "Derek Coleman is one of the best people I've ever known. He doesn't do things for recognition or reward. He does them because they're right. That's who he is. That's who he's always been." "I know. I see that now." Catherine took a shaky breath. "How do I make it up to him? How do I even begin?" "You start by asking him what he needs, not what you want to give, what he needs. And if he doesn't want anything from me, then you respect that. You stay out of his way. You let him live his life without your interference." Patricia paused. "But Catherine, if you really want to change, if you really want to be different, there's something else you can do." "What?" "Look around this hospital. Look at all the people you've never noticed. The janitors, the security guards, the cafeteria workers. They're all human beings. They all have stories, families, dreams. Start seeing them. Start treating them like they matter. Because they do." Catherine nodded slowly. "I will. I promise." "Don't promise me. I don't need your promises. Promise yourself. Promise your son. Promise the universe that gave you a second chance you didn't deserve." Julian stirred in his bed. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then finding his mother's face. "Mom." Catherine leaned forward, taking his hand. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I feel weird." "That's normal. You had a big procedure today. But you're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine." "Did they find someone? Someone with the special blood?" Catherine thought of Derek Coleman resting 2 floors below his daughter, curled against his chest. "Yes, sweetheart. They found someone very special." "Can I meet them? I want to say thank you." Catherine stroked her son's bald head, feeling the soft fuzz of hair that was just starting to grow back. "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." Derek woke at 8:47 p.m. The room was dark except for a thin strip of light from the hallway. Maya was still beside him, snoring softly, her arm thrown across his chest, like she was afraid he might disappear. His body ached in ways he hadn't felt since medical school, since the days when he'd worked 36-hour shifts and survived on coffee and determination. His lower back throbbed where the needles had been. His head pounded with dehydration. His muscles felt like they'd been wrung out and hung up to dry. But he was alive. And somewhere in this hospital, Julian Sterling was alive too. Derek lay in the darkness, listening to his daughter breathe, thinking about what he had done and why he had done it. He hadn't forgiven Catherine Sterling. He wasn't sure he ever would. What she had taken from him, his career, his reputation, his wife, those things couldn't be returned. They were gone forever, casualties of her indifference, victims of her power. But he had made a choice today, a choice that felt like freedom. Bitterness had been growing inside him for 2 years, a tumor of rage and resentment that fed on his grief. Every time he mopped a floor that he should have been walking as a surgeon, every time he saw Maya wearing clothes from Goodwill instead of the boutiques Angela had loved, every time he lay awake at night, wondering how his life had gone so wrong, the bitterness grew. Angela had seen it. Even at the end, when she could barely speak, she had seen the darkness taking root in his heart. "Don't let them win," she'd whispered. "They took our house. They took your job. Don't let them take your soul." Derek had promised. But promises were easy to make and hard to keep. Today, he had kept it. Not because Catherine Sterling deserved grace. She didn't. But because Maya deserved a father who chose love over hate. Because Angela deserved a husband who honored her memory. Because Julian deserved a chance to grow up and become whoever he was meant to be. Derek stroked Maya's hair, feeling the silk of it between his fingers. "I did it, Angela," he whispered into the darkness. "I kept my promise." Somewhere in the hospital, a machine beeped. Somewhere in the city, traffic hummed. Somewhere in the universe, Angela Coleman smiled. Derek closed his eyes and let sleep take him again. The next morning, Julian Sterling sat up in bed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't much, just a few inches, just enough to see the window, just enough to watch the sun rise over Columbus. But for a boy who had been flat on his back for 11 months, it was everything. "Mom, look, I can see the birds!" Catherine rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face again. She had cried more in the past 24 hours than in the entire rest of her life combined. "I see them, baby. I see them." "Do you think the man who saved me likes birds? I want to show him. I want to tell him about the birds." "I'll find out, sweetheart. I'll find out everything he likes." Dr. Okonkwo entered the room, her face showing the first genuine smile Catherine had seen from her in months. "His numbers are extraordinary," Patricia said. "The marrow is engrafting beautifully. At this rate, he could be in remission within 6 weeks." "Remission?" Catherine repeated the word like it was sacred. "You really think so?" "I'm cautiously optimistic, which in my profession is basically the same as throwing a party." Patricia checked Julian's monitors. "He's going to need to stay here for another few weeks, and he'll need regular checkups for years. But Mrs. Sterling, your son is going to make it. He's going to grow up." Catherine collapsed into a chair, her body shaking with relief. Julian looked at his mother confused. "Why are you crying, Mom? The doctor said good things." "I know, baby. I know. These are happy tears." "Happy tears are weird." "They are, aren't they?" Patricia smiled. "Julian, how would you feel about meeting the person who donated the marrow that saved you?" "He's recovering in the hospital right now." Julian's eyes went wide. "Really? Can I really meet him?" "That depends on whether he wants to meet you, but I'll ask. I'll ask him today. Tell him I said thank you. Tell him I think he's a superhero, like in the movies but real." Catherine looked up at Patricia. Their eyes met, sharing the weight of everything that had happened. "I'll tell him," Patricia said. "I'll tell him exactly that." Derek was eating breakfast when Patricia knocked on his door. Well, not eating exactly. More like pushing scrambled eggs around a plate, while Maya tried to convince him that the toast was actually delicious, even though it was burned at the edges. "It's crunchy, Daddy. Crunchy is good." "Crunchy is charcoal, baby." "Same thing." Patricia smiled at the exchange. "Am I interrupting?" Derek shook his head. "Just negotiating with a tiny food critic. What's up?" "Julian's awake. He's asking to meet you." The room went quiet. Maya stopped arguing about toast. Derek set down his fork, asking, "Apparently he wants to thank his superhero personally. His words, not mine." Derek looked at Maya. She looked back at him with Angela's eyes, waiting to see what he would decide. "What do you think, baby? Should we go meet him?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Is he nice?" "I don't know. I've never met him. But you saved him, so he should be nice to you. That's only fair." Derek almost laughed. That's very logical, sweetheart. Mommy said I get my logic from you. She did. She said you were the smartest man she ever knew, except when you forgot to take out the trash. Then you were the dumbest. This time Derek did laugh. A real laugh, the kind that hurt his sore abdomen, but felt good anyway. Okay, he said to Patricia. We'll go meet him, but if his mother starts crying again, I'm leaving. Patricia grinned. No promises on that one. They walked to Julian's room together. Derek was still weak, still dizzy, still feeling the effects of the extraction. But he refused the wheelchair this time. He wanted to walk into that room on his own feet, wanted Julian to see a man, not a patient. Maya held his hand the whole way. When they reached the door, Derek paused. Through the glass, he could see Julian sitting up in bed, a coloring book in his lap, his bald head catching the morning light. Catherine sat beside him, but for once, she wasn't the center of attention. Derek took a deep breath. Ready, baby. Ready, daddy. They pushed open the door. Julian looked up. His eyes, blue bright, full of curiosity, found Derek's face and stayed there. Are you him? The boy asked. Are you the one who saved me? Derek walked to the bedside. Maya stayed close, her hand never leaving his. I'm him, Derek said. My name is Derek, and this is my daughter Maya. Julian grinned. It was the kind of grin that could light up a room, the kind that reminded Derek why he had become a doctor in the first place. I'm Julian. I'm 9. I like dinosaurs and baseball, and I want a German Shepherd when I get better. Those are all excellent things to like. My mom said you gave me part of your bones. Is that true? Derek knelt down so he was at eye level with the boy. Not exactly bones, more like the stuff inside them. It's called marrow. It helps your body make new blood. Did it hurt? Derek thought about lying, thought about protecting this child from the truth. But he remembered what Angela always said, children deserve honesty. Yeah, he said. It hurt pretty bad. Julian's face fell. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to get hurt. I know you didn't, and it was worth it. Look at you now, sitting up talking coloring. A few days ago, you couldn't do any of that. Julian looked down at his coloring book. He'd been working on a picture of a T-Rex green and purple, and slightly outside the lines. My mom says you're a hero, but she also says heroes are made up. So which is it? Derek smiled. I'm not a hero, Julian. I'm just a dad. I have a daughter your age, and I would do anything to keep her safe. Your mom feels the same way about you. She loves you more than anything. Julian glanced at Catherine, who was crying again silently this time, trying not to interrupt. She cries a lot, Julian said matter-of-factly. She didn't used to, but now she does. That's because she almost lost you. When you almost lose something you love, it changes you. Julian considered this. Then he held up his coloring book. Do you want to color with me? I have extra crayons. Derek looked at the boy, 9 years old, bald from chemo, thin as paper, but still offering to share his crayons with a stranger. In that moment, he understood why he had made the choice he'd made. Why Angela had asked him to choose mercy. Why bitterness was never worth the price it demanded. I would love to color with you, Derek said. He sat on the edge of the bed. Maya climbed up beside him, immediately reaching for the purple crayon. Purple is the best color, she announced. No way, Julian said. Green is the best. Purple. Green. Derek looked across the bed at Catherine. She was watching the scene with an expression he couldn't quite read, wonder maybe, or gratitude, or the beginning of something new. Their eyes met. Derek didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't offer any gesture of reconciliation. But he didn't look away either. And for now, that was enough. The coloring session lasted 47 minutes. Derek didn't count them on purpose, but his body kept track, the ache in his lower back growing sharper, the dizziness creeping back and the fatigue pulling at his eyelids. He pushed through it because Julian was laughing, because Maya was arguing about whether dinosaurs could be purple, because for 47 minutes he wasn't a disgraced surgeon or a night security guard or a widower drowning in debt. He was just a man coloring with children. "Mr. Derek," Julian held up his finished picture. "Is this what a T-Rex really looked like?" Derek studied the drawing. Green body, purple spots, orange teeth that were definitely too big for the skull. "You know what scientists aren't totally sure what colors dinosaurs were, so maybe yours is exactly right." Julian beamed. "That's what I told my mom. She said T-Rexes were probably brown, but brown is boring." "Brown is very boring," Maya agreed. "My daddy says boring colors are for boring people." "I never said that. You said it about Mr. Henderson's car." Derek winced. Mr. Henderson was their landlord. His car was beige. Derek had definitely said something about it being the most depressing vehicle in Ohio. That was different. "How?" "Because Mr. Henderson isn't here to hear it." Catherine had been silent the entire time, watching from her chair, like someone observing a foreign ritual. Now she spoke, her voice careful. "Julian, you should rest. You've had a big morning." "But I'm not tired." "Your body is tired even if your brain isn't. The doctor said you need to sleep so the new marrow can do its job." Julian's face fell. He looked at Derek with desperate eyes. "Will you come back? Will you color with me again?" Derek glanced at Catherine. Her expression was unreadable. "We'll see, buddy. You focus on getting better first. Promise you'll try?" The word hit Derek harder than it should have. Promises were sacred things. Angela had taught him that. You didn't make promises you couldn't keep. "I'll try," he said finally. "That's the best I can do." Julian nodded solemnly, accepting the answer with more maturity than most adults Derek had known. "Okay, but if you do come back, bring Maya. She's funny." "I'm not funny," Maya protested. "I'm serious." "You said dinosaurs could fly if they believed in themselves. That's funny." "That's science." Derek lifted Maya off the bed, hiding his grimace as the movement sent pain shooting through his hips. "Come on, scientist. Let's let Julian rest." They walked toward the door. Derek's hand was on the handle when Catherine's voice stopped him. "Mr. Coleman, wait." He turned. She was standing now, her arms crossed over her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. "I need to talk to you, privately, please." Derek looked at Maya, then back at Catherine. "I have to get her home. Mrs. Patterson has been watching her for 2 days, and I'll have a car take her. My driver can bring your neighbor here, pick up your daughter. Take them wherever they need to go. Please, just give me 10 minutes. Derek's jaw tightened. "I don't need your car. I don't need your driver." "I know you don't need them. I'm asking you to accept them anyway. Not as charity. As—" She struggled for the word. "As a gesture, a starting point." Maya tugged at Derek's sleeve. "Daddy, I'm hungry. And tired. Can we go home?" He knelt down to her level. "Baby, I need to talk to this lady for a few minutes. Is that okay? Someone will take you to Mrs. Patterson's apartment, and I'll come get you as soon as I'm done. Promise." There was that word again. Promise. Maya studied his face with Angela's eyes, searching for truth, the way her mother always had. Whatever she found must have satisfied her. "Okay, but don't take too long. We still need to get ice cream." "I haven't forgotten." Catherine made the call. Within 5 minutes, a hospital volunteer arrived to escort Maya to the car that was waiting downstairs. Derek watched his daughter walk away, her small hand gripping the volunteer's fingers, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. When she disappeared around the corner, he turned back to Catherine. 10 minutes. "Thank you." She led him to a private waiting room down the hall. It was empty except for 2 couches and a window that looked out over the parking lot. Derek didn't sit. Neither did Catherine. They stood on opposite sides of the room, 2 people who should have had nothing to say to each other, carrying the weight of everything that had happened between them. Catherine spoke first. "I've been up all night, thinking, researching, trying to understand. Understand what happened, why I did what I did." She paused. "I pulled your personnel file, your employment records, everything from before I terminated you." Derek felt his shoulders tense. "Those files are confidential. I own this hospital. Nothing is confidential from me." She held up a hand before he could respond. "I know. That's part of the problem. I've spent so long believing that owning things gave me the right to know things, to control things, to decide what matters and what doesn't." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong about so much. Is this your apology? Because I've already heard it." "No. This is something else." Catherine reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I found the incident report from the night you were terminated, the one about Emily Whitfield." Derek went still. "I read the whole thing." Catherine continued. "Every page. The surgery notes, the witness statements, the board's recommendation." She unfolded the paper with trembling hands. "Do you know what the board said before I overruled them? They said the procedure was justified. They said it was brilliant. Those were their exact words. Dr. Coleman's intervention, while unconventional, demonstrated exceptional surgical judgment and saved the patient's life. We recommend commendation, not termination." Derek's throat tightened. "I never saw that report." "I know, because I buried it. I told the board their recommendation was irrelevant. I told them liability concerns outweighed clinical outcomes. I told them that Sterling Medical Center couldn't afford to have surgeons who thought they were above protocol." Catherine's voice broke completely. "I told them you were dangerous, and they believed me because I paid their salaries." The room seemed to shrink. Derek felt the walls pressing in the air, growing thick. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I spent 2 years letting you believe you were wrong when you were right. Because—" Catherine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because my son is alive today, because of a man I tried to destroy. And I need you to understand that I know. I know what I did. I know what I am." "What are you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Catherine looked at him. Her face was bare, stripped of makeup, stripped of pretense, stripped of everything she had spent 47 years building. "I'm a coward," she said. "I was afraid of what your decision meant. If an individual doctor could override protocol and be right, then what did that say about the systems I'd built? What did it say about the control I thought I had?" She shook her head. "I was so afraid of being wrong that I destroyed someone who was right. And I never even stopped to consider the human cost." Derek walked to the window. Outside, the sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows across the parking lot. He could see the car that had taken Maya pulling out onto the main road. "When Angela was diagnosed," he said quietly, "we had a plan. I would work. She would rest. We would fight it together. The doctors said lupus was manageable. With the right medication, she could live a normal life." Catherine didn't move. "Then I lost my job, lost my license, lost our insurance. We burned through our savings in 3 months. Then we sold the house, then the car, then everything else." Derek's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "She stopped taking her medication because we couldn't afford it. She told me she felt fine. She told me not to worry. She told me she'd rather have the money go to Maya's school clothes than her pills." "Derek, don't." He turned to face her. "Don't say my name like you know me. You don't know me. You never knew me. You looked at my face and saw a liability. You looked at my career and saw a risk. You never once looked at my life and saw a person." Catherine flinched like he'd struck her. "Angela died on a Tuesday," Derek continued. 3:15 in the afternoon. Maya was at school. I was mopping floors in your building. A nurse called me and told me to come quickly. By the time I got there, she was gone." His voice finally cracked. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to hold her hand. I never got to tell her I loved her one more time. Because I was cleaning toilets in a building owned by the woman who put me there. Catherine sank onto the couch, her body folding in on itself. I didn't know, she whispered. God, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You said it yourself. You buried the report. You silenced the board. You erased me from the system because it was easier than admitting you might have been wrong. Derek's voice hardened. And now you want to apologize. Now you want to make it right. Tell me, Mrs. Sterling, how do you make this right? How do you give me back my wife? How do you give Maya back her mother? Catherine didn't answer. She couldn't answer. There were no words for what she had done. No apology sufficient. No gesture adequate. They stood in silence, two people separated by choices that could never be unmade. Finally, Derek spoke again. You want to know why I saved your son? Catherine looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Angela asked me to, before she died. She made me promise not to let bitterness win. She said you only took things from us, material things, status things. She said you couldn't take who I was unless I let you. Derek paused. I almost let you. Every day for 18 months I almost let you. But then your son was dying, and I was the only one who could save him, and I had to choose. I had to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. And you chose mercy. No, I chose Maya. I chose to be the father she thinks I am. I chose to honor the woman I loved. I chose to prove that Catherine Sterling didn't have the power to turn me into something cruel. Catherine covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs she couldn't control. Derek watched her cry. He felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe, not ever, but something. The bitterness that had been eating at him for 2 years loosened its grip just slightly, like a fist unclenching one finger at a time. What happens now? Catherine asked through her tears. I don't know. What can I do? There has to be something. Anything. Derek thought about it. He thought about Maya, about the bills piling up on his kitchen counter, about the double shifts he'd be working until his body gave out. He thought about the medical license he'd lost, the career he'd built, the future that had been stolen from him. There's nothing you can do for me, he said. I don't want your money. I don't want your job offers. I don't want anything that comes from guilt. Then what? Change. Really change. Not because you got caught. Not because your son needed something from someone you hurt. Because it's right. Derek walked toward the door. You asked me what you could do. Start seeing people. Not as employees or liabilities or numbers on a spreadsheet. As human beings. That's what Angela would have wanted. That's what I want. He reached for the handle. Derek. He stopped. The medical board, Catherine said. They're having a review session next month. Cases of wrongful termination. License reinstatements. She stood, her legs unsteady. I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell them what I did. I'm going to submit the original board report that I buried. Derek turned slowly. You'd do that? It won't bring Angela back. It won't erase what happened. But maybe, she swallowed hard, maybe you could be a doctor again. Maybe you could save other people's sons, other people's wives. Derek stared at her. The woman who had destroyed him was offering to rebuild what she had broken, not as a transaction, not as a bargain, as an act of contrition that might cost her everything. Why? Because my son asked me what a hero is, and I realized I couldn't answer him. Because I've never been one. I've never even tried. Catherine met his eyes. I want to try. I want Julian to grow up knowing that his mother could change, that even the worst people can become better if they're willing to do the work. The room was silent. Derek felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. I'm not going to thank you, he said finally. I'm not asking you to. And I'm not going to forgive you. Not today. Maybe not ever. I understand. Derek opened the door. The hallway stretched out before him, leading back to his daughter, back to his life, back to the uncertain future that waited. But I'll be at that hearing, he said over his shoulder. I'll listen to what you have to say. He walked out without looking back. Catherine stood alone in the empty room watching him go. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a plan. She didn't have a strategy. She didn't have power or money or influence to fix what was broken. All she had was the chance to tell the truth. And for now, that would have to be enough. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine. Derek went back to work. Both jobs, the night shifts at Sterling Medical Center, the day shifts at the Amazon warehouse. His body protested every hour, still recovering from the marrow extraction, but he couldn't afford to rest. Bills didn't wait for healing. Rent didn't care about exhaustion. Maya went back to school. Mrs. Patterson went back to watching her during Derek's shifts. Life resumed its familiar rhythm, the steady drum of survival that had become Derek's only music. But something had changed. At Sterling Medical Center, people looked at Derek differently. The janitors who had ignored him now nodded in the hallways. The nurses who had walked past without seeing him now stopped to ask how he was doing. Even some of the executives, the same executives who had witnessed his humiliation 2 years ago, went out of their way to say hello. "Heard what you did," one of them said. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit, someone Derek vaguely recognized from the boardroom where his life had ended. "That took guts." "I just did what anyone would do." "No, you didn't. And we both know it." Word had spread. That was the thing about hospitals, they were worse than high schools for gossip. By the end of the first week, everyone knew the story. The janitor who saved the CEO's son. The disgraced surgeon who chose mercy over revenge. The man who gave his blood to the woman who had taken everything else. Derek didn't want the attention. Didn't want the whispered conversations that stopped when he entered a room. Didn't want to be anyone's hero. But Maya loved it. Tommy's mom asked if you were really a superhero. She reported one evening bouncing on the couch while Derek tried to make dinner. "I told her you were better than a superhero because you don't even have a cape." "I definitely don't have a cape." "Superheroes need capes. You just need your brain and your heart. That's what Mommy used to say about doctors." Derek's hand stilled over the stove. "Mommy said that..." "She said doctors were the closest thing to magic that was real. She said they could take broken people and make them whole again." Maya tilted her head, her expression suddenly serious. "Do you miss being a doctor, Daddy?" The question hit him somewhere deep. "Yeah, baby. Sometimes I do." "Do you think you'll ever be one again?" Derek thought about Catherine's offer. The hearing, the testimony, the possibility of getting back something he'd thought was lost forever. "I don't know, Maya. We'll see." "I hope you do. Because I want to tell Tommy's mom that my daddy is a real superhero doctor, not just a fake one." Derek laughed despite himself. "There are no fake superheroes, Maya." "Yes, there are. Billy at school wears a Superman shirt, but he can't even do a somersault. That's fake." "That's a very specific definition." "It's the right definition." Derek couldn't argue with that. 2 days before the hearing, Julian Sterling came home from the hospital. Derek heard about it from Patricia, who called him on his lunch break with the news. "His numbers are incredible," she said. "Complete engraftment. No signs of rejection. The oncology team is calling it one of the most successful transplants they've ever seen." "That's good. That's really good." "Derek, there's something else. Julian's been asking about you. Every day. He drew you a picture, a whole series of pictures actually. He wants to know if he can see you again." Derek was silent. "You don't have to," Patricia added. "I'll tell him you're busy, but I thought you should know." "What kind of pictures?" "Dinosaurs mostly. But there's one..." Patricia paused. "There's one that's different. It's a drawing of 2 men standing next to each other. A big one and a small one. Julian told Catherine it was The man who saved me, and the dad I want to be when I grow up." Derek's throat tightened. "Derek, you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here." "What do you want me to tell him?" Derek looked across the warehouse floor. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, conveyor belts humming, the endless machine of American commerce grinding forward without pause. "Tell him I'll come see him. After the hearing, whatever happens there, I'll come see him." "I'll tell him." And Derek, "Yeah. Whatever happens at the hearing, you should know that it won't change anything for Julian. He's already decided you're his hero. Nothing Catherine says or doesn't say is going to alter that." Derek hung up the phone and went back to work. But Patricia's words stayed with him, echoing in his mind like something he needed to remember. The night before the hearing, Derek couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. The board could reinstate his license. They could deny his case. They could ask questions he didn't want to answer, demand explanations he wasn't prepared to give. And then there was Catherine. She would be there, testifying, admitting to the lies she had told, the evidence she had buried, the career she had destroyed, in front of the same board that had once recommended his commendation, in front of colleagues who had watched his fall and said nothing. Derek didn't know how he felt about it. Didn't know if he wanted her to succeed or fail. Didn't know if her testimony would heal something or just reopen wounds that had barely begun to scar. He rolled over and looked at the photograph on his nightstand, Angela holding Maya as a baby, both of them laughing at something the camera hadn't captured. "What do I do?" he whispered to the empty room. "What would you want me to do?" The photograph didn't answer. It never did. But somewhere in the silence, Derek heard Angela's voice anyway. The same words she had spoken 1,000 times when he came home from impossible surgeries, impossible decisions, impossible days. "You already know what's right. You've always known. The hard part isn't figuring it out. The hard part is doing it." Derek closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would walk into that hearing room. He would sit across from the woman who had destroyed his life. He would listen to her testimony. And he would decide once and for all what kind of man he wanted to be. The morning came too quickly. Derek dropped Maya at school, kissed her forehead, and watched her run through the front doors with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Then he got on the bus and rode across town to the Ohio Medical Board offices. The building was glass and steel, the kind of architecture that was supposed to inspire confidence, but just made Derek feel small. He walked through the lobby, signed in at the security desk, and took the elevator to the 7th floor. The hearing room was at the end of a long hallway. Derek could see the door from the elevator, could see the small crowd gathering outside it. Lawyers, administrators, a few faces he recognized from Sterling Medical Center. And there, standing apart from the others, was Catherine. She was dressed simply. No designer suit, no expensive jewelry, just a dark blue dress and flat shoes. Her hair pulled back from a face that looked like it hadn't slept in days. When she saw Derek, she straightened. Their eyes met across the hallway. Neither of them spoke. The door opened. A clerk in a gray suit stepped out. "The board is ready. Dr. Coleman, Mrs. Sterling, please come in." Derek walked forward. Catherine fell into step beside him. Together they entered the room where everything would change. The board consisted of 5 people, 3 men, 2 women. All of them older, experienced, wearing expressions that gave nothing away. Derek recognized Dr. Harold Freeman, the chairman. They had worked together once years ago on a complicated cardiac case. Freeman's eyes found Derek's face. "Dr. Coleman, it's been a long time." "It has. Please, both of you have a seat." Derek sat on the left side of the room. Catherine sat on the right. Between them stretched a distance that felt much larger than the physical space. Freeman shuffled papers on the table before him. "We're here today to review the termination of Dr. Derek Coleman from Sterling Medical Center and to consider new evidence that has been submitted regarding the circumstances of that termination." He looked at Catherine. Mrs. Sterling, you've requested to testify. Is that correct? Yes. The board should note that Mrs. Sterling's testimony is voluntary. She has waived her right to legal counsel and has agreed to answer any questions we may have. Freeman paused. Mrs. Sterling, you may proceed. Catherine stood. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. 2 years ago, I made a decision that destroyed an innocent man's career. I told this board that Dr. Derek Coleman was a liability. I told them he had violated protocol in ways that endangered patients. I told them his termination was necessary for the safety of Sterling Medical Center. She paused. Everything I told them was a lie. The room went silent. The truth is that Dr. Coleman saved a patient's life. A 6-year-old girl named Emily Whitfield. She was dying on the operating table when standard protocol failed. Dr. Coleman made a split-second decision to use an experimental procedure. It worked. Emily survived. She's 12 years old now and she's alive because of Derek Coleman. Catherine reached into her folder and pulled out a document. This is the original board recommendation from that night. The one I buried, the one I told no one about. She handed it to Freeman. It recommends commendation, not termination. It calls Dr. Coleman's intervention brilliant and life-saving. It says his judgment should be celebrated, not punished. Freeman read the document. His face remained impassive, but his eyes flickered with something that might have been shock. Why? He asked. Why did you bury this? Catherine's voice wavered. Because I was afraid. Because I had built my career on control, on protocol, on the idea that individual doctors should never deviate from established procedures. Dr. Coleman's success challenged everything I believed. If he could be right when the rules said he was wrong, then what did that say about the systems I had created? What did it say about me? She turned to face Derek. Her eyes were filled with tears. I chose my ego over his life. I chose my power over his family. And because of that choice, his wife died without proper medical care. His daughter grew up without a mother. He lost everything, his career, his home, his future, because I was too proud to admit I might have been wrong. The room was absolutely still. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Catherine continued. I know I don't deserve it. I'm here because Dr. Derek Coleman is one of the finest surgeons I have ever encountered, and he deserves to have his license reinstated. I'm here because my son is alive today, only because Derek chose to be a better person than I ever was. And I'm here because the truth, the real truth, needs to be on the record. She sat down. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to press them flat against her thighs to keep them still. Freeman looked at the other board members. They exchanged glances, murmured conversations too quiet to hear. Then he turned to Derek. Dr. Coleman, do you have anything you'd like to say? Derek rose slowly. His heart was pounding, but his voice was calm. I became a doctor because I wanted to help people. That's all I ever wanted. When I made the decision to save Emily Whitfield's life, I knew it might cost me everything. I knew the procedure wasn't approved. I knew the board might not support me. He paused. I did it anyway. Because a child was dying. Because I had the skills to save her. Because that's what doctors are supposed to do. He looked at Catherine. She met his eyes, her face wet with tears. Mrs. Sterling took my career. She took my reputation. And indirectly, she contributed to circumstances that took my wife. Derek's voice cracked. I have spent 2 years hating her for that. Hating myself. Wondering if I should have just followed protocol and let Emily Whitfield die. The room held its breath. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Sterling's son was dying. He needed a bone marrow transplant. And I was the only match in the world. Derek paused. I could have refused. I could have let her feel what I felt when I watched my wife slip away. I could have taken revenge in the most complete way possible. He shook his head. But that's not who I am. That's not who Angela, my wife, wanted me to be. She made me promise not to let bitterness win. She made me promise to stay true to the man she married, the man who became a doctor to save lives, not to judge who deserved saving. Derek turned back to the board. I don't know if I want to be a surgeon again. The past 2 years have changed me. But I do know this. I was right to save Emily Whitfield. I was right to save Julian Sterling. And I would make those same choices again, even knowing what they cost me. He sat down. Freeman looked at the document in his hands. Then he looked at Catherine. Then he looked at Derek. This board will take a 30-minute recess to deliberate, he said. Dr. Coleman misses. Sterling, please wait outside. Derek walked out of the room without looking back. The hallway was empty except for Catherine. She stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, her face still wet with tears. When Derek approached, she didn't turn around. Thank you, she said quietly, for coming, for listening. You said you were going to testify. I said I would listen. That's all this was. I know. She finally turned to face him. Derek, whatever the board decides, I want you to know that I meant everything I said in there. I'm going to change. I'm going to be different. Not for you, for Julian, for myself, because I don't want to be the person I was anymore. Derek studied her face. The woman who had destroyed him looked nothing like the woman he remembered. The cold certainty was gone. The imperious confidence had crumbled. What remained was something raw and human and broken. I believe you, he said. You do. I believe you want to change. Whether you actually will. He shrugged. That's up to you, not me. The door opened. The clerk stepped out. The board has reached a decision. Please come back in. Derek and Catherine walked back into the room side by side. Freeman stood at the head of the table, the document still in his hands. Dr. Derek Coleman, he said, after reviewing the evidence and testimony presented today, this board has voted unanimously to reinstate your medical license effective immediately. All previous disciplinary actions are hereby expunged from your record. Derek felt his legs go weak. Furthermore, Freeman continued, this board formally apologizes for the miscarriage of justice that occurred 2 years ago. Your actions on the night of Emily Whitfield's surgery were exemplary, and you deserve recognition, not punishment. He set down the document and looked at Derek with something that might have been respect. Welcome back, Dr. Coleman. Derek couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. His eyes were too wet. But somewhere in a place beyond words, he heard Angela's voice one more time. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. And for the first time in 2 years, Derek Coleman allowed himself to believe it. The first person Derek called was Mrs. Patterson. He stood outside the medical board building, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped his phone twice. The sun was warm on his face. Traffic hummed in the distance. The world looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but everything had changed. Hello? Mrs. Patterson's voice was cautious. She never trusted unknown numbers. It's me. It's Derek. Derek, is everything okay? Is Maya? She's fine. She's at school. He took a breath. I got my license back. They reinstated it, just now. Silence on the other end. Then a sound that might have been a sob. Oh, Derek. Oh, thank God. Angela would be so happy. She would be so proud of you. Derek closed his eyes. I know. I think she already knows. What are you going to do? Are you going back to surgery? I don't know yet. I haven't thought that far ahead. Well, you think about it. You take all the time you need. And Derek? Yeah. You pick up that little girl from school today. You tell her what happened. She deserves to know her daddy is a doctor again. Derek smiled despite the tears streaming down his face. I will. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, for everything. Don't thank me. Just be the man Angela always knew you were. He hung up and stood there for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. 2 years of mopping floors. 2 years of night shifts and double shifts and exhaustion that seeped into his bones. 2 years of watching other doctors walk past him like he was invisible. It was over. Or maybe it was just beginning. Derek walked to the bus stop, then changed his mind and kept walking. He needed to move, needed to feel his body carrying him forward, needed to process what had just happened before he saw Maya. He walked for 45 minutes, past coffee shops and grocery stores and office buildings, full of people who had no idea that a man's life had just been returned to him. Past the hospital where Angela had died. Past the apartment building where they used to live back when they had savings and hope, and a future they could see. By the time he reached Maya's school, his legs ached and his feet were sore, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do next. Maya spotted him from across the playground. "Daddy?" She sprinted toward him, her backpack bouncing wildly, her braids flying behind her. "You're early. You're never early." Derek caught her in his arms and lifted her up, spinning her once before setting her down. "I know. Special day." "What kind of special?" He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "Maya, do you remember when I told you I used to be a doctor? Of course, you helped people. Before the mean lady made you stop." Derek's heart clenched at how simply she understood it. "Well, today some other people decided that the mean lady was wrong. They said I can be a doctor again." Maya's eyes went wide. "Really? Like a real doctor? With the white coat and everything?" "If I want to, yes." "Do you want to?" The question caught him off guard. Everyone else had assumed. Mrs. Patterson, Patricia, even the board members who shook his hand after the hearing. They all assumed he would go back to surgery, pick up where he left off, resume the career that had been stolen from him. But Maya didn't assume anything. She just asked. "I think so," Derek said slowly. "But it's complicated. Being a doctor takes a lot of time, long hours. Sometimes I wouldn't be home for dinner. Sometimes I wouldn't be there to pick you up from school." Maya's face grew serious. She was thinking, really thinking. "Would you be helping people? Like you helped Julian?" "Yes, that's what doctors do." "Would it make you happy?" Derek felt something break open in his chest. "Yeah, baby. I think it would make me happy." Maya nodded firmly. "Then you should do it. Mommy always said, happy daddies make happy families. And I can help. I can make my own cereal for breakfast. I can walk to Mrs. Patterson's by myself. I'm almost 8. You're 7. Almost 8. That's basically 8. Derek laughed and pulled her into a hug. "I love you, Maya. You know that." "I know. I love you too, Daddy." She pulled back and looked at him with Angela's eyes. "Can we get ice cream now? You promised." "I did promise. Let's go." They walked to the ice cream shop 3 blocks from the school, the same shop Angela used to take Maya to on special occasions. Derek ordered chocolate with extra chocolate chips. Maya got strawberry with sprinkles and gummy bears and cookie crumbles and every other topping the shop offered. "That's a lot of toppings," Derek observed. "It's a special day," Maya said, as if this explained everything. They sat at a small table by the window, eating their ice cream in comfortable silence. Derek watched his daughter navigate the mountain of toppings with the seriousness of a surgeon performing a delicate procedure. She was so much like Angela. The focus, the determination, the quiet joy she found in small things. "Daddy." "Yeah." "Is Julian going to be okay? For real?" Derek set down his spoon. "The doctors think so. His body accepted the new marrow. That's a really good sign." "Will you see him again?" "I promised I would, after the hearing, so, yes." Maya dug her spoon into the ice cream, then paused. Do you think his mommy is sorry for real?" It was a complicated question. Derek had been asking himself the same thing for weeks. "I think she wants to be sorry," he said carefully. "I think she's trying to understand what she did wrong, Whether she'll actually change? He shrugged. That takes time. People don't become different overnight. Mommy said everyone deserves a second chance. She said that's how God works. Your mommy was a very wise woman. I know. Maya took another bite of ice cream. I think you should give the mean lady a second chance. Not because she deserves it, because you're not mean. And mean people don't give second chances. Only nice people do. Derek stared at his daughter, 7 years old, almost 8. Somehow wiser than anyone he knew. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't listen. Derek laughed so hard that other customers turned to look. He didn't care. His daughter was brilliant, and his license was restored, and Angela's voice was echoing in his heart. For the first time in 2 years, the future felt like something other than survival. The next morning, Derek called Patricia. I need to talk to you about something. Let me guess. You want to come back to Sterling Medical? Derek paused. How did you know? Because I know you. You're a surgeon, Derek. It's not what you do. It's who you are. You've been dying inside without it. Patricia's voice softened. And frankly, this hospital needs you. We've needed you since the day Catherine threw you out. There's something else. What? I don't just want to come back as a surgeon. I want to do something different, something that matters. Surgery doesn't matter. Of course it does, but... Derek searched for the right words. When I was mopping floors here, I saw things. The overnight janitors who couldn't afford health insurance. The security guards working double shifts to pay for their kids' medicine. The cafeteria workers whose families fell through the cracks. He paused. These are the people who keep this hospital running, and they're the same people the system forgets. Patricia was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? A clinic, a free clinic, inside the hospital or connected to it, for employees and their families, for anyone who falls through the cracks, staffed by volunteer doctors, funded by... He hesitated. Funded by people who have more than they need. You're talking about asking Catherine Sterling for money. I'm talking about asking her to put her money where her mouth is. She said she wanted to change. She said she wanted to make things right. Well, here's her chance. Patricia let out a long breath. Derek, that's ambitious. I know. It would take a lot of work, a lot of convincing. The board would have questions. The legal team would have concerns. I know. And you'd be putting yourself in a position where you have to work with Catherine, regularly, after everything she did to you. I know. Derek's voice was steady. But here's the thing, Patricia. For 2 years I've been angry. I've been bitter. I've been so focused on what she took from me that I forgot what I still had. Angela always said that hurt people, but healed people heal people. I want to be a healed person. I want to build something instead of tearing something down. The line was silent for so long that Derek thought he might have lost the connection. Then Patricia spoke, her voice thick with emotion. Angela would be so proud of you. I hope so. When do you want to start? Tomorrow, if possible. I'll make some calls. Set up a meeting with the hospital administrators. You might want to reach out to Catherine directly. If you're serious about this, you're going to need her support. Derek thought about the woman who had sobbed in the hearing room. The woman who had testified against herself. The woman who had destroyed him and then tried to rebuild what she had broken. I'll call her, he said. Today. The call lasted 43 minutes. Derek had expected it to be awkward. Expected long silences and stilted words, and the weight of history pressing down on every sentence. But Catherine surprised him. A clinic, she repeated after he explained the idea. For hospital employees. Free health care. And their families. Anyone who qualifies. Based on income insurance status, whatever criteria makes sense. Why are you calling me about this? Because you have resources, because you have influence, and because you said you wanted to make things right. Derek paused. This is your chance. Not to apologize, not to feel less guilty, but to actually do something that matters. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. What would you need? Startup funding, space in the hospital, legal support to navigate the regulations, and your voice frankly. If Catherine Sterling says this clinic is important, people will listen. And you would run it. I would help design it, staff it, make sure it actually serves the people it's supposed to serve. I wouldn't be in charge. That's not what this is about. But I would be there. Working with me. In the same building as you. Yes. Another silence. Derek could hear Catherine breathing, could almost hear her thinking. Derek, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Can you do this? Can you work with me? See me every day, be in the same room as me, and not hate me, because I couldn't bear it if this beautiful thing you're trying to build got poisoned by what I did to you. I couldn't bear being responsible for destroying something good twice. Derek thought about the question. Really thought about it. I don't hate you anymore, he said finally. I'm not sure I ever did. What I felt was grief, loss, anger at the universe for being unfair. You were just the face I put on it. That doesn't answer my question. Yes, it does. I can work with you because I'm not working for you. I'm working for the people who need this clinic. For the janitor whose daughter has asthma and can't afford an inhaler. For the security guard whose wife has diabetes and rations her insulin. For everyone who keeps this hospital running while the hospital forgets they exist. He paused. You're not the point, Catherine. They are. As long as we both remember that we'll be fine. Catherine's voice cracked. You really mean that? I really do. Then I'm in. Whatever you need. However much it costs. I'll make it happen. There's one more thing. What? Julian asked if he could see me again. I told him I would come after the hearing. I'd like to keep that promise. Catherine made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He's been driving me crazy asking about you. He drew you more pictures. He wants to show you his new dinosaur book. He wants to ask you about being a doctor. She paused. He wants to be just like you when he grows up. Derek felt something twist in his chest. He doesn't even know me. He knows enough. He knows you saved his life. He knows you were kind to him when you didn't have to be. For a 9-year-old, that's everything. When can I come? Whenever you want. Tomorrow, tonight. Right now if you're free. Derek looked at his watch. It was 4:15. Maya would be at Mrs. Patterson's apartment doing homework waiting for him to pick her up. Tomorrow, he said. I'll bring Maya. She's been asking about him too. Julian will be thrilled. He talks about her constantly. Apparently she's the funniest person he's ever met. She thinks she's serious. That's what makes it funny. Derek smiled despite himself. Tomorrow then, around 2. We'll be here. And Derek? Yeah. Thank you for calling. For giving me a chance to be part of something good. Her voice dropped. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful anyway. We'll see how it goes, Derek said, one day at a time. He hung up and sat in silence, processing the conversation. 6 weeks ago, Catherine Sterling had been a monster. A villain in the story of his life. The woman who had taken everything. Now she was going to help him build something new. Angela would have laughed at the irony. She always said the universe had a twisted sense of humor. The next afternoon, Derek and Maya arrived at the Sterling house. It wasn't what Derek had expected. He had imagined a mansion. Crystal chandeliers and marble floors and staff members in uniforms. The kind of excess that made working-class people feel small. Instead, it was a regular house. Large, yes. Well-maintained, but regular. A brick colonial with a green lawn and a basketball hoop in the driveway. The kind of house that could have belonged to any successful family in any suburb in America. "This is where Julian lives?" Maya asked. "This is it." "I thought it would be bigger." "Why?" "Because his mommy is the mean lady. Mean people always have big houses." Derek laughed. "That's not always true, baby." "It is in movies." The front door opened before they could ring the bell. Julian stood there in jeans and a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it, his face split by a grin so wide it seemed to take up half his head. "You came, Maya, you came too." He grabbed Maya's hand and pulled her inside, already talking about his dinosaur book and the new video game his mom had let him play, and the dog he was going to get when he was completely better. Derek followed more slowly, adjusting to the strangeness of being in Catherine Sterling's home. Catherine met him in the entryway. She was dressed simply again. No power suit, no designer jewelry, just slacks and a sweater, and the face of a woman who was still learning how to be someone different. "Thank you for coming." "I said I would." "I know. But saying and doing are different things. I've learned that lately." They walked into the living room where Julian and Maya were already spread out on the floor, the dinosaur book open between them. Julian was pointing at pictures and explaining each species with the authority of a 9-year-old expert. Maya was asking questions that Derek suspected she already knew the answers to. "She's good with him," Catherine observed. "She's good with everyone. She got that from her mother." What was Angela like? Derek was surprised by the question. No one had asked him that in a long time. People were always sorry about Angela, always offering condolences, but they never asked about who she was. "She was light," he said finally. "That's the best word for it. She made every room brighter just by being in it. She laughed at bad jokes. She cried at commercials. She believed that everyone had good in them even when they proved her wrong." He paused. "She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She made me want to be better, not for her, for myself." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry I never got to meet her." "You wouldn't have liked each other." "Because of what I did. Because you were different people. Angela didn't trust power. She thought it corrupted people, made them forget what mattered." Derek looked at the children on the floor. "She might have been right about that." "She was right about a lot of things, it sounds like." "She usually was. I just didn't always listen." They stood in silence watching the children play. Maya was making roaring sounds now, pretending a plastic triceratops was chasing Julian's T-Rex across the carpet. Julian was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "He hasn't laughed like that in months," Catherine said softly. "Since before the diagnosis. I forgot what it sounded like." "Kids are resilient. More than we give them credit for." "Maya seems resilient too, after everything she's been through." Derek watched his daughter tackle Julian with the triceratops, both of them collapsing into giggles on the carpet. "She has bad days," he admitted. "Days when she asks when mommy is coming back. Days when she cries herself to sleep. Days when she's angry at the world for being unfair." He paused. "But she keeps going. She finds reasons to laugh. She finds people to love. I think that's what resilience really is. Not being strong, just refusing to give up." Catherine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I want to be more like that. More like her. More like you. You don't want to be like me. Trust me." "I do, though. I want to be someone who chooses kindness when cruelty would be easier. Someone who builds things instead of destroying them. Someone my son can be proud of." Derek looked at her. The woman who had ended his career. The woman whose choices had contributed to Angela's death. The woman who was really trying to become someone different. "Then start," he said simply. "Stop talking about change and start making it. The clinic, the foundation, whatever comes next. Actions matter more than words." Is that what Angela would have said? No, she would have been gentler, But she's not here and I am. So you get my version. Catherine almost smiled. Fair enough. Julian ran over to them, Maya close behind. Mr. Derek, Maya says you're going to be a doctor again. Is that true? It is. Can you be my doctor? I want you to be my doctor. You already have great doctors, buddy. They're taking good care of you. But you're the one who saved me. You should be the one who makes sure I stay saved. Derek felt his throat tighten. That's not really how it works. Why not? Because... Derek struggled for an answer. Because being someone's doctor is a big responsibility. It means promising to take care of them for a long time, and I haven't figured out exactly what kind of doctor I want to be yet. Julian's face fell. Oh. Maya tugged at Derek's sleeve. Daddy, just tell him yes. He's sad now. Maya. Julian. Maya said, ignoring her father completely. My daddy is the best doctor in the whole world. He saved my mommy for a long time. He saved you. He can save anybody. She put her hands on her hips. And even if he's not your real doctor, he'll always help you if you need it, because that's what he does. That's who he is. Julian looked at Derek with hope in his eyes. Is that true? Derek knelt down so he was at eye level with both children. Yeah, buddy. That's true. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. That's a promise. Julian threw his arms around Derek's neck. The embrace was fierce and unexpected, and Derek felt something crack open in his chest. Thank you, Julian whispered. Thank you for saving me. Derek held the boy close, feeling the beat of his heart strong and steady, pumping blood that had come from Derek's own bones. You're welcome, he whispered back. You're so welcome. Maya joined the hug, wrapping her arms around both of them, her small body pressed against her father's side. Catherine watched from across the room, tears streaming down her face. And in that moment, something that had been broken began to heal. The Angela Coleman Community Health Clinic opened its doors on a Tuesday morning in March. Derek stood at the entrance watching the first patients file through. A janitor from Sterling Medical with chest pain he'd been ignoring for months. A cafeteria worker whose daughter had an ear infection. A security guard whose wife needed her blood pressure checked. People who had been invisible to the system finally seen. Patricia stood beside him, her arms crossed, her face showing an emotion Derek had rarely seen from her. Pride. You did this, she said. You made this happen. We did this, all of us. Don't be modest, it doesn't suit you. Derek smiled despite himself. The past 6 months had been a blur of meetings and paperwork and negotiations that tested every ounce of patience he possessed. The hospital board had questioned the costs. The legal team had raised concerns about liability. The insurance companies had demanded clarifications that seemed designed to make the project fail. But Catherine had been true to her word. Every obstacle she cleared, every funding gap she filled, every door that closed she opened another. Not as charity, not as penance, as partnership. Dr. Coleman. Derek turned. A young woman stood behind him, maybe 25, wearing scrubs and a nervous expression. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I'm one of the volunteer physicians. I just wanted to say... She hesitated. I read about what happened to you. The termination, the hearing, everything. And I wanted you to know that you're the reason I went into medicine. Derek blinked. I'm sorry. Emily Whitfield. The girl you saved. She's my cousin. Sarah's eyes glistened. I was 14 when it happened. I watched you fight for her when everyone said she was gone. I watched you break the rules to save her life. And I decided right then that I wanted to be a doctor like you. Derek didn't know what to say. The moment stretched between them, heavy with meaning. I'm not a role model, he finally managed. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what a role model would say. Sarah smiled. I'm honored to work with you, Dr. Coleman. Whatever you need, I'm here." She walked away to greet the first patient. Derek watched her go, something shifting in his chest. Angela had always believed that kindness rippled outward, that a single act could change lives in ways you never saw. He hadn't understood what she meant until now. "You okay?" Patricia asked. "Yeah, I think I am." The clinic's first day served 47 patients. Derek saw 12 of them himself, sliding back into the rhythm of medicine, like putting on a coat he'd forgotten he owned. The examinations, the diagnoses, the conversations that required as much listening as speaking. It felt like coming home. But it also felt different. Before his termination, Derek had been focused on surgery, the dramatic interventions, the life-or-death moments. He had loved the adrenaline, the precision, the godlike power of holding someone's heart in his hands. Now he found himself drawn to something quieter. The grandmother who hadn't seen a doctor in 5 years because she couldn't afford the copay. The father who worked 3 jobs and never had time to get his diabetes checked. The children whose parents couldn't miss work to take them to appointments. These weren't the patients who made headlines. They were the ones who fell through the cracks. And Derek realized with a clarity that surprised him that this was where he was meant to be. "Daddy?" Maya burst through the clinic doors at 3:15, her backpack bouncing, her face lit up with excitement. Mrs. Patterson followed behind, moving slower, but smiling just as wide. "How was school, baby?" "Amazing. I told everyone my daddy is a doctor again, and they didn't believe me, so I showed them the newspaper article, and Tommy's mom said you were a hero, and I said I know, and then we had pizza for lunch." Derek caught her as she launched herself into his arms. "That's a lot of things for one day." It was a lot of day. Mrs. Patterson reached them slightly out of breath. "She's been bouncing off the walls since this morning. I think she's more excited about this clinic than you are." "I'm pretty excited." "Then she's very excited." Mrs. Patterson looked around the waiting room at the patients being seen, at the staff moving with purpose. "Angela would have loved this, Derek. She would have been so proud." Derek's throat tightened. "I know. Is it everything you hoped it would be?" He looked at his daughter in his arms. He looked at the clinic he had built. He looked at the people whose lives were being changed by something that hadn't existed 6 months ago. "It's better," he said. "It's so much better." 2 weeks later, Julian Sterling walked through the clinic doors. He wasn't there as a patient. His cancer was in remission, his checkups handled by the oncology team that had saved his life. He was there because he had something to give. "Mr. Derek." Julian ran across the waiting room and wrapped his arms around Derek's waist. "I brought you something." Catherine followed behind, a large box in her arms. "He's been planning this for a month. I couldn't talk him out of it." "What is it?" "Open it. Open it." Derek took the box and lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of coloring books, crayons, markers, and small toys. Dinosaurs featured prominently. "It's for the kids who come here." Julian explained, his words tumbling out in a rush. "When I was in the hospital, I got really scared sometimes. But coloring helped. And the toys helped. So I thought maybe other kids get scared too. And maybe these would help them." Derek knelt down so he was at eye level with the boy. "Julian, this is incredible. This is one of the kindest things anyone has ever done." "Really? Really? You know what this tells me?" "What?" "It tells me you're going to grow up to be an amazing person. Someone who thinks about others. Someone who wants to help." Derek put his hand on Julian's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, buddy." Julian's face glowed. "My mom helped. She paid for all of it, but the idea was mine." Derek looked up at Catherine. She was trying not to cry, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression a mixture of love and something that looked like hope. "Thank you," Derek said to her. "Both of you." "He wanted to do something meaningful," Catherine replied. "Something that mattered. I told him the best way to honor a gift is to pass it forward." "That's good advice." I learned it from someone. Their eyes met. The history between them, the pain, the destruction, the slow and uncertain rebuilding hung in the air. But so did something else. Something that felt like the beginning of peace. Julian. Maya appeared from the back room, where she'd been helping organize supplies. You came. I brought toys for the clinic. Can I see? Can I help put them out? The two children ran off together, already planning where each item should go. Derek and Catherine watched them disappear around the corner. He talks about her all the time, Catherine said. Maya this, Maya that. I think she's the best friend he's ever had. The feeling is mutual. Maya doesn't make friends easily. She's particular. Like her father. Derek raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Take it however you want. They stood in comfortable silence. The clinic hummed around them, patients being called, doctors conferring, the steady rhythm of healthcare being delivered to people who needed it. I've been thinking, Catherine said finally, about what you said. Actions matter more than words. I've been trying to figure out what that looks like, long term, beyond the clinic. And, Catherine took a breath, I want to start a foundation, in Angela's name, for families who lose their insurance because of job loss or illness, to help them cover medical costs during the transition, to make sure no one has to choose between medicine and food. Derek felt his chest tighten. Catherine, I know I can never undo what happened. I know no amount of money will bring her back, but maybe I can prevent it from happening to someone else. Maybe I can honor her memory by helping the people she would have helped. Derek couldn't speak. The words jammed in his throat, too big to come out. You don't have to say anything, Catherine continued. You don't have to be involved. I just wanted you to know. I wanted your permission to use her name. Permission. She was your wife. Her memory belongs to you and Maya. If you don't want her name attached to my foundation, I understand. I'll call it something else. Derek looked at this woman. 6 months ago he had hated her, had blamed her for everything that went wrong in his life, had imagined confronting her, screaming at her, making her feel a fraction of the pain she had caused. Now she was standing before him, asking to honor his wife's memory. Angela would have wanted this, he said finally. She would have been skeptical of you. She would have watched carefully to make sure you were genuine. But she would have wanted this. Does that mean yes? It means I think she would have given you a chance, and I'm trying to be the man she believed I could be. Derek paused. So yes, you can use her name. The Angela Coleman Foundation. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve this. I know I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But that's not the point. Derek looked toward the hallway where their children had disappeared. Maya told me something once. She said mean people don't give second chances. Only nice people do. He turned back to Catherine. I'm trying to be a nice person. For my daughter. For my wife. For myself. You are a nice person. You always were. I wasn't always. After Angela died, I wanted to hurt you. I wanted to watch you suffer. I spent months imagining what I would say if I ever got the chance to confront you. He shook his head. That's not nice. That's not who Angela raised me to be. But you chose differently. When it mattered, you chose differently. That's the only choice that counts. The clinic continued to grow. By summer, they were seeing over 100 patients a week. Derek had hired 2 more volunteer physicians, a nurse practitioner, and a social worker to help families navigate the systems that had failed them. The Angela Coleman Foundation launched in August, providing grants to families in crisis across Ohio. Derek didn't go back to surgery. He had thought about it, had even been offered a position at the hospital, his old position restored with honors. But he had declined. Why? Patricia had asked. You are one of the best surgeons in this city." "Because this is where I'm needed," Derek had replied. "Anyone can wield a scalpel. Not anyone can build something like this." He wasn't wrong. The clinic had become something more than a healthcare facility. It was a community. Patients brought food for the staff. Staff stayed late to help families with paperwork. The waiting room had become a place where strangers shared stories and supported each other through difficult diagnoses. Derek watched it all with a wonder that never quite faded. "You look happy," Mrs. Patterson observed one evening when she came to pick up Maya. "I am happy. I haven't seen you happy since Angela was alive. It's good. It's really good." "I'm trying. Every day I'm trying." Mrs. Patterson patted his arm. "That's all any of us can do." In October, Julian had his one-year checkup. The results were extraordinary. No sign of cancer. Bone marrow function completely normal. Immune system strong and healthy. The doctors called it a complete success. Catherine called Derek personally with the news. "He's clear," she said, her voice breaking. "He's completely clear. They said he's as healthy as any 9-year-old they've ever seen." "That's wonderful. That's incredible news." They want to write a paper about his case. The perfect match, the successful transplant, the complete remission. They said it's one for the textbooks. Derek smiled. Julian always wanted to be famous. He wants to celebrate. He wants to have a party. And he wants you and Maya there. Will you come? Of course we'll come. Derek. Catherine's voice softened. Thank you. For everything. For saving him. For giving me a chance to change. For showing me what it means to be truly good. You're showing yourself that. I just got out of the way. No. You did more than that. You could have been bitter. You could have been cruel. You could have let Julian die and no one would have blamed you. But you chose differently. You chose to be better, and that choice changed everything. Derek thought about Angela, about the promise he had made, about the man she had always believed he could be. I had help, he said, from someone who loved me, someone who taught me that the measure of a person isn't how they treat those above them, it's how they treat those below. Angela. Every good thing I've done since she died, I've done because of her. She must have been extraordinary. She was. She really was. The celebration was held on a Saturday afternoon in November. Catherine had wanted to rent out a fancy restaurant. Julian had insisted on a backyard barbecue. Julian won. The Sterling house was transformed. Balloons everywhere. A bounce house that was definitely too big for the yard. A table covered with enough food to feed a small army. And so many people gathered to celebrate a boy who had beaten cancer. Derek arrived with Maya at 2 o'clock. They were immediately swept into the chaos. Maya ran off to find Julian. Derek was intercepted by Catherine, who pressed a drink into his hand and pointed toward a group of people he didn't recognize. Those are Julian's teachers, she explained. And those are our neighbors. And that's my mother, who is going to ask you a lot of personal questions that you don't have to answer. Your mother. She flew in from Florida. She's been dying to meet the man who saved her grandson. Catherine. Just smile and nod. She'll love you. Everyone loves you. Before Derek could protest, he was being pulled toward a white-haired woman with Julian's eyes and a grip that could crack walnuts. So you're the doctor, she said, looking him up and down. My grandson hasn't stopped talking about you for a year. Mrs. Sterling, it's nice to meet you. Call me Ruth. Mrs. Sterling makes me feel old. She peered at him more closely. You're taller than I expected. Julian made you sound like a giant. I'm average height. For a giant, maybe. Ruth smiled, and suddenly Derek saw where Catherine had gotten her intensity. Thank you, Derek. For what you did. For my grandson. For my daughter. For your daughter. She's different now. Better. I didn't think that was possible. I thought she was too far gone. Ruth glanced at Catherine, who was laughing at something Julian was saying across the yard. But you changed her. You showed her what it meant to be truly good. She changed herself. I just didn't get in the way. Ruth laughed. Modest too. I like you, Derek Coleman. You're good people. She patted his arm and wandered off toward the food table, leaving Derek standing alone with a drink he hadn't touched and a feeling he couldn't quite name. Maya found him an hour later. Daddy, come see, Julian has a trampoline. A trampoline? In the backyard. His mom said we can jump on it, but only if you say it's okay. Derek looked across the yard at the massive trampoline that hadn't been there when they arrived. Catherine had apparently added it as a surprise. Julian was already bouncing, his laughter ringing out across the party. Please, Daddy. Please. Derek looked at his daughter's face. Angela's eyes. Angela's smile. Angela's fierce determination to squeeze every drop of joy out of every moment. Go ahead, baby. Be careful. Maya squealed and ran off. Derek watched her climb onto the trampoline, watched Julian grab her hands, watched them bounce together like gravity was just a suggestion. They're going to be friends forever, you know. Derek turned. Catherine stood beside him, a glass of wine in her hand, her expression soft. You think so? I know so. Julian has already asked if Maya can be in our family. I told him that's not exactly how it works, but he's determined to figure out a loophole. Derek laughed despite himself. Maya said the same thing. Something about adoption and legal technicalities. They're 9 and 7. Where did they learn about legal technicalities? YouTube, probably. They watched the children bounce in silence. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. The party hummed around them, conversations and laughter and the clinking of glasses. Derek, Catherine said finally, I need to tell you something. What? The foundation launched last month. We've already approved grants for 23 families. 23 families who would have lost everything without help. She turned to face him. That's Angela's legacy. That's what her name means now. Not tragedy, hope. Derek's throat tightened. 23 families. And counting. We're projecting 50 by the end of the year. 100 by next year. Catherine's voice wavered. Every life we save, every family we help carries her name. I want you to know that. I want you to know that Angela Coleman will never be forgotten. Derek couldn't speak. The words jammed in his throat, too big, too heavy, too full of meaning. I know I can never make up for what I took from you, Catherine continued. But I can try to build something worthy of her memory, something that would have made her proud. It already has, Derek managed. She would have loved this, all of it. You think so? I know so. They stood together watching their children play, watching the sun sink below the horizon, watching a new chapter begin. What happens now? Catherine asked. I don't know. I stopped planning for the future a long time ago. Now I just try to make each day count. Is that enough? Derek thought about the question. He thought about Angela, about the promise he had made, about the man he had become. It's everything, he said. Each day is everything. You don't get yesterday back. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. All you have is right now. How you use it, who you help, what you build, that's what matters. Catherine nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand that. Good. Keep understanding it. Every day. That's how you become someone different. The party continued until the stars came out. Maya fell asleep on a lawn chair wrapped in a blanket, her face peaceful. Julian sat beside her, fighting sleep, determined to make the night last forever. Derek carried his daughter to the car, her small body warm against his chest. Catherine walked them out, Julian stumbling sleepily beside her. Thank you for coming, Catherine said. It meant everything to Julian. And to me. Thank you for inviting us. Will you come back? For Christmas, maybe Julian wants to show Maya his new video game. Derek looked at his daughter asleep in his arms. He looked at Julian barely awake, but still reaching for Maya's hand. He looked at Catherine standing in the light from her doorway, no longer the monster he had imagined, but something more complicated, something human. "Yeah," he said. "We'll come back." He drove home through quiet streets, Maya sleeping in the back seat, the radio playing soft and low. The city passed by in a blur of lights and shadows. His city. His home. The place where everything had fallen apart and was now slowly being rebuilt. When they reached the apartment, Derek carried Maya inside and tucked her into bed. She stirred, but didn't wake, mumbling something about trampolines and dinosaurs before drifting back to sleep. Derek stood in her doorway watching her breathe. "I did it, Angela," he whispered. "I kept my promise. I didn't let bitterness win." He walked to the living room and sat on the couch, looking at the photograph on the shelf. Angela holding Maya as a baby, both of them laughing. "I found something," he continued, talking to her like he always did in these quiet moments. "Something I didn't expect. Not happiness exactly. Something deeper. Purpose. Peace. The feeling that I'm finally becoming the man you always believed I could be." He picked up the photograph, running his thumb across Angela's smile. "The clinic is doing well. The foundation is changing lives. Maya is growing up strong and kind, just like you wanted. And Julian, the boy I saved, he's going to be okay. He's going to grow up and do amazing things." Derek set the photograph back on the shelf. "I forgave her, Angela. Not because she deserved it. Because carrying that hatred was destroying me. Because you asked me not to let bitterness win. Because Maya was watching, and I wanted to show her what grace looks like." He leaned back on the couch and closed his eyes. "I don't know what comes next. I don't know where this road leads. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of the future. I'm not running from the past. I'm just here, present, alive, trying to be good." The apartment was quiet. The city hummed outside the window. Somewhere a child who had been saved was sleeping peacefully. Somewhere a woman who had destroyed a life was learning to build new ones. Somewhere the universe was spinning forward, carrying all of them toward whatever came next. Derek opened his eyes and looked at Angela's photograph one more time. "Thank you," he whispered, "for loving me, for believing in me, for teaching me that the measure of a man isn't what he achieves or what he accumulates. It's who he becomes when everything is taken away." He stood up and walked to his bedroom, ready for sleep, ready for tomorrow, ready for whatever the future held. Because Derek Coleman had learned the only lesson that mattered. Life would break you. That was certain. The people you loved would leave. The things you built would crumble. The dreams you cherished would turn to ash in your hands. But none of that was the end. The end was what you chose to do after. The end was whether you let the breaking make you bitter or make you better. The end was whether you used your scars to hurt others or to help them heal. Derek had chosen to heal. He had chosen to build. He had chosen to be the man Angela had always known he could be, and in that choice he had found something more precious than revenge, more lasting than bitterness, more powerful than all the pain that had come before. He had found his way home,